All right, let's go into our number 5. This person was also voted on by 2 people. This is now another person who was, unfortunately, their career was derailed by injuries. There is an argument that this person actually got robbed of an MVP, but this dude was a bad man. It is none other than Priest Holmes.
Yeah, I'm not saying he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or anything, but in a 3-year span, he led the league in rushing once and touchdowns twice. And by touchdowns, I'm not talking like 10, 15, 21 rushing touchdowns, 27 rushing touchdowns.
Man, the year Priest Holmes had 21 rushing touchdowns. He also had 3 receiving touchdowns and 672 receiving yards to go with it, 1,600 yards.
Bro, can you imagine the fantasy numbers?
Yeah, he had 3 straight years of over 2,000 total yards, led the league in total yards twice from scrimmage. In those 3 years, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowl. And the year you're talking about, 2003, he should have won the MVP because the Chiefs were, 13-3? And he had 27 rushing touchdowns, which broke a record. But we had to give it to Peyton Manning and Steve McNair.
Yep.
Okay,
So he's like, I don't see a problem with it.
I don't see that.
I think a lot of people our age do remember Priest Holmes, especially those who play fantasy football. You definitely knew about Priest Holmes. But I think now that time has gone by, just like some of the other people, we don't mention him as much, or he's not talked about as being a great running back because he just got injured. So that was a bummer. But
when people talk about Priest Holmes, they also talk about how he was a bruising running back. He was a decent receiving back too.
Yeah, 3 straight years of 600 plus receiving yards, 9 yards plus receiving per catch.
And no one talks about his receiving. He was a good receiving running back.
The year he got hurt, which is 2004, in 8 games, he had 892 yards and 14 touchdowns. So imagine if he was able to double that. He could have potentially broken his own record the next year.
There's also one thing that's going to also hurt him is the fact that the Chiefs are really good now, that the most of the people that were going to remember him were Chiefs fans, but now because they have Kelsey and Mahomes, he's not going to be looked at to the same extent. Partially, I think also Tony Gonzalez is being affected by that too, is that people are going to forget how good they are. Because
Priest Holmes was that dude. Look up some highlights. This was a beast.
He was. All right, we're going to go into our next one. We are going to continue this trend of running backs. Well, the next 2, they're both tied for 3rd place. They're both running backs. Both coming in with 19 points. The first one we're going to talk about is another guy who was drafted back in the late 90s. Unfortunately, partly for him, his teams weren't that great, but he was still pretty good. He ended his career with my team, but he is mostly known for his time with a team in Florida that sucked, Jacksonville Jaguars. It is none other than Fred Taylor.
Yes, sir.
I went with a different running back, but good choice.
It's a shame that he got hurt because he had the nickname Fragile Fred for a while, but then as time went on, he kind of shed that label, I think.
Man, he was such a beast.
7 1,000-yard rushing seasons. A decent receiving back,
Jacksonville they had a good running back, and then they had a great receiver, Jimmy Smith.
Yeah, that was the issue. I was like, their team just wasn't great, so he's kind of just not talked about because.
But then towards the end, he was in that committee with Maurice Jones-Drew, who was also good.
Yeah, he had 7 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He only went to 1 Pro Bowl, which is kind of surprising.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
because he wasn't
even his best season either.
No, it wasn't. He rushed for 1,500 yards. That's usually guaranteed your Pro Bowl. He didn't make Pro Bowl.
No, but look at that Pro Bowl year, though. 1,200 yards and a 5.4 average as a 31-year-old.
5.4 average. I mean, whew.
That is actually
that's when running backs are declining. And, he's like, I'm going to have one more better year.
Yeah, and he only had 3 years averaging under 4 yards a carry.
Now, the thing that's holding him back is that he didn't get the most rushing touchdowns. But, I mean, if you're just talking about what he brought to the team, I mean, he was the offense for a while, especially later on after Jimmy Smith left. He was essentially the offense. Because those Byron Leftwich years, I mean, you think when they drafted all those receivers in the first round, the second rounds that never panned out, all they had was Fred Taylor. I saw an interview recently when someone was interviewing Fred Taylor, and they asked him if he should be in the Hall of Fame, which of course he's going to say yes. But I could tell he really wants to be, so I hope he does eventually get the chance to be a Hall of Famer. Because I think he's borderline. I don't know if he is to me, but I do think he's pretty close. He's right on that edge, so I could see him eventually being like a senior committee.
I gotta
addition.
see like who else they let in. There's probably some players that shouldn't be in that Fred Taylor should be in ahead of.
Well, like if Frank Gore makes it, I think Fred Taylor's about that same tier of running back. It's just Frank Gore lasted longer. You could probably argue that Fred Taylor could be a Hall of Famer then.
All right, we're going to go into our next guy. I'm also tied for third place. This dude was just missed out on Dynasty. He ran hard. His best season was like probably statistically one of the best seasons you've ever seen. And unfortunately, at the end again, kind of wore down with some injuries, but like prime, he was good. It is none other than the 2-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, Steven Jackson. The season I was talking about is 2006 when he had 1,500 rushing yards with 13 TDs and 800 receiving yards with 3 TDs.
Biggest issue for him is that he was never on any good teams. His quarterbacks his whole career were garbage. In fact, I wanted to know what was the overall record of the games he's played, and for his career, he is 52, 107, and 1.
Yeah.
So you're losing a 1-to-2 ratio. He just never had any moments in the playoffs that kind of put him there. So I think that's why he's getting underrated, because he was always just the best player on a bad team. He never got a fair shake until he was too old and broken down when he went to Atlanta. I think they went to the playoffs one of those years, but he was already wearing down. Actually, both the Falcons teams he was on didn't go to playoffs either.
Dang. How many times did he make playoffs?
The teams he had an overall record of 9-18 with the Falcons.
Jeez.
Steven Jackson only made the playoffs twice, and it was the first year. Rams only made the playoffs because the Eagles sat all their players the last 2 games, and they played them one of those 2 games.
Record, right?
Yeah. So, and then the other year was New England, his last year in the league.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's hurting him. He doesn't have any iconic moments.
So in between the beginning and end of his career, he missed the playoffs every year.
And in New England, he didn't play. Like he had
right. Yeah, so I just think when you're some of these great players on bad teams sort of get forgotten over time. So he is underappreciated, and because again, the fact that he ran for 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons with the Rams, with the quarterbacks they had. Oh my gosh!
When you knew he was really, you knew he was the guy. Like there was no question of who are we worried about. No, there was one guy because he was with Mark Bolger. It really shows you your career. Like sometimes when we talk about legacies, like it really is kind of the luck of the draw of maybe you just get drafted, because he gets drafted to New England and plays in that era. He's one of the greatest.
Do you want to know how bad Mark Bolger was during those from 2005 to 2009? Mark Bolger started games in those 5 years. He was 15-44. Wow.
How good is what you're saying?
That's got to be all-time bad run there. That's terrible.
And for some people who don't know who Steven Jackson is, he wasn't a finesse runner. He was a power runner. He would run over you.
And it looked good, too.
He had that touchdown celebration. If you see him do it, you know what it is.
Yeah, it's very fun. We all wish he was drafted to a better team.
Yep.
He was one of my favorite running backs of that time period.
Yeah, right. We're going to go into our number 2. Coming in with 21 points. Most people would actually consider this person the number 1, but he made our number 2 list. Again, this might be considered a homer pick for some due to where he went to school, but this guy is still in his wait right now to get into the Hall of Fame, and it is a crying shame this guy is not in yet. And also, he was part of one of the greatest offenses ever assembled. Super Bowl champion, Wolfpack alum, it is Torrey Holt.
And what was his nickname? Big Game. You know why? Because he showed up in pivotal moments.
And when he retired, he averaged the most receiving yards per game in a career. Now, obviously, that's been surpassed since he's been retired. You talk about all these big name players. Torrey Holt is the top of the list of receiving yards per game.
He made the NFL's Hall of Fame team for the 2000s. So how is he usually? That means you're a Hall of Famer. So he is still not in the Hall of Fame. But yet they said you are definitely one of the best. I don't know how many go on there, 2 or 3 receivers of your era. You are that guy. So how are you going to turn around and say he's not in there for the Hall of Fame? I don't get it. And he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Over 1,100 receiving yards. 8 straight over 1,100. Not just 1,000, over 1,100.
2 seasons with above 1,600 yards, which at that time I sure had never been done. Led the league in receiving yards twice. And if you include the 13 and 1,600 yards, he did it 6 times over 1,300 yards. Yeah.
How you seen his hands? I mean, he caught all his balls with a messed up hand.
I just remember when after he was done playing, I was like, "Oh, this guy's surefire Hall of Famer." Because like most of his career, he was considered a top guy. I just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, when we were growing up, this is the time we started getting into football. He was like, this is a big deal. The arguments I've heard from people to not be in the Hall of Fame, and this is from people who, I don't know if they vote, but they're NFL media people. They would say he didn't do it long enough, which is just a crock of shit.
How many 1,000-yard years does he have?
Yeah, 8. Yeah.
How's that not long enough?
He played 11 years.
And in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But he had the same amount of 1,000-yard receiving years as Isaac Bruce, and Isaac Bruce played 16 years. He didn't have the receiving touchdowns. He only had 74. I hate when people count that against players. Like,
74 is
they can't
fine.
control when they get the ball.
He also has the ring to go along with it, so it's not like you can't say, "Oh, he didn't contribute to winning." No, he contributed to winning. He has the ring as well.
Yeah, 7-time Pro Bowl. As match one, he's on the Hall of Fame 2000 team. His teammate, who everyone says is better, did not make that list.
And you can't say he didn't like have a playoff moment. In the Super Bowl they won, he had 7 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. So and that's it's 23-16 score. So clearly he played a major factor in the game. So I just don't see what the reasoning is of holding him back. This should have been done a few years ago.
And just the NFL just does not value wide receivers.
They will. Because they will listen to this podcast. They will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he gets in this year, it's because of us guys.
Grassroots.
I mean, he deserves to be. I don't care what you say. Like, I've heard his biggest claim is he doesn't have 100 touchdowns. Well, a lot of receivers don't.
That never stopped anybody. Julio's not going to.
Calvin Johnson didn't get 100.
Whatever. Don't make these rules. Let's go into some honorable mentions. This guy, by some, is considered a great of this team. Many people will say he started and he was one of the people that revolutionized this position, known for his flash. And some people will even argue that he is the greatest Eagles quarterback of all time. Not me, just some Randall Cunningham.
Oh, okay.
It was my number 2. I put him on there because every single time you talk about quarterback revolutionized the game or that running quarterback, everybody brings up Vic first when they should bring up Randall Cunningham. Or Frank Tarkenton. One of those two they didn't bring up first.
No, I do agree.
Think about bringing Vic up.
Yeah, a lot of people do think Vic was the first one. Like, Randall was running for 900 yards back in the 80s. Or 90s, whenever he did it.
You don't want to bring Cunningham, you can bring Frank Tarkenton. But you got to bring one of these two up before you even begin to bring Vic up. And then Randy Cunningham also has one of the best of almost getting sacked but avoiding it and then throwing a touchdown. I don't know how that man stayed up. His knees did not touch the ground on that hit.
Fun fact that, I do all the stats. He is one of the few quarterbacks that actually have a 500 record or better. He's 500 against winning teams. Most quarterbacks have losing records.
My guy doesn't.
I'm not saying he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but I'm saying he revolutionized the game.
Mm-hmm.
Just give the man the respect he deserves.
All right. We're going to go into our next person. We're going to another old school quarterback. This was voted on by me. We've mentioned this person before. I put Roger Staubach. We've addressed it before he was really the player of his generation. He just didn't have the gloss and the flash. But if you really look at him versus Joe Namath is always the one that people bring up, but they do not bring up Staubach, even though Staubach was a better player, had better stats, and did Staubach a lot more.
Easily better than Namath.
Yeah, and his numbers would have been better, but he obviously was in the Navy for a while, so he didn't start playing until he was 27 in the NFL.
And he led the league in passer rating 4 times. And in fact, in 1971, he had a 104.8 quarterback rating, which is just absurd. And he went 10-0. I mean, his numbers, his quarterback rating for playing in the 70s of 83.4, that would be the equivalent of probably like 97, 98 now. So that's how ridiculous that number is.
Yeah, I know that era. I mean, yeah, that's also like Johnny Unitas and all that. But underneath Johnny Unitas, Roger Staubach's right there.
Staubach is probably the best quarterback in their history still.
Yeah, he really is. So, underrated. Shout out to you, Raj. All right, we're gonna go into another honorable mention. Talk about a guy who was so deadly, teams refused to kick to him. Was voted on by one person. He did play for Chicago, and he was a very explosive person. It is Devin Hester.
Is that Jacob?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, it was
Because I put him on here because he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I agree. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, he didn't have like the stats at receiver to be in there." I'm talking about revolutionized the game. He
revolutionized your position, the punt returner, you deserve to be in.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely. I know you had like people who came before him, like Dante Hall and stuff, but they weren't doing what Devin Hester was doing.
No, in fact, Devin Hester would have had way more return touchdowns if people bothered kicking to him.
Yep.
The Hall of Fame should be players that, if you were to write a book of the NFL, could you write it with leave this player's name out of it? Like, and would you have to put this player's name in it? Honestly, you really, if you go by those rules, Hester deserves to be in it.
Yeah,
you cannot write a book of the NFL not mention Devin Hester.
And Hester's on 2 Hall of Fame teams for the NFL. They put him in a 2000s team and a 2010s. So they're saying for essentially 2 decades worth, you were the best returner, bar none. This is the Football Hall of Fame, right? Special team. That's a pivotal part of football. So why are we not really supporting that?
Just dedicate a whole section of the Hall of Fame to special team players.
The Bears actually had a shot in that Super Bowl because of Devin Hester.
Oh yeah, he was the only thing you were really scared of. He was the only thing you were really scared of. All right, next one we're going to talk about. This guy is known for his longevity and has played in the league for years and years. It is Frank Gore, voted on by D3.
Everybody knows he's been there for a long time, so everybody's like, "Oh, he got those yards because he's been in the NFL for so long." He's got there because he's one of the better running backs of his era. And you don't get 1,000 yards rushing at age 33 if you're just all right.
So and then he almost got 1,000 yards a year after that too, right? At 34. So this is
961, and the year before that he had 967.
That's nuts.
But he was consistently a good running back his whole career.
Well, I truly respect that he finished his career with 16,000 yards even.
That is very nice.
Yeah. That is right and round. He understood.
And see, what's funny about Gore is, like, in college he was known for being injured quite a bit. In the NFL, man, he was rarely hurt. Really,
well, see,
rarely missed a game.
Yeah, from when he was 28 to 34, he didn't miss a game.
Yeah, which is just crazy for a running back.
All right, we're gonna go to our number one. Came in with 27 points. This person is 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 5-time first-team All-Pro. Played mostly from the late 90s throughout the 2000s era. Is a position that doesn't get the credit anymore that it used to. Was a middle linebacker and mostly played with the Dolphins. It is none other than Zach Thomas.
How did I miss Zach Thomas?
Yeah, that's my number one. That's my number one.
That's my number one as well, Jacob. That's my number one as well.
Man of class.
Well, you are, because fellas, I will tell you right now, there are people online, legitimately people online right now, that would tell you to your face that Zach Thomas is one of the most overrated players in NFL history, and they would say you right now that he's a bad player.
How?
Because they would say that he couldn't cover. I'm like, I'm sorry, we're grading players based on what era they're in. And his era of football, he was one of the greatest players in the league.
He did his assignment, and he got the best.
He got 17 interceptions, 20 sacks. Not many players can say that. So I just find it a joke. He retired in 2008 as one of the best linebackers. Most people with common sense agree, probably one of the best top 3 linebackers of his era. And it took him until this year to get in the Hall of Fame. That's utterly ridiculous. He should
have been. He was so good. He should have been first ballot Hall of Famer. He should have been in the Hall of Fame. He should have been in the Hall of Fame a decade ago because he retired in 2008.
Yeah, 2009. I think what hurt him was the fact he also came in with Ray Lewis. It was like in that same.
It's a Ray Lewis Urlacher, but it's like Brian Urlacher, but he's like right. I mean, he is in the conversation with
top
those
3
guys.
of that era. I think he's number 3.
So the Pro Football Reference has this thing called AV for approximate value. Their way of measuring how important you are to your team. In Dolphins history, he would be 3rd all time behind Dan Marino and Jason Taylor.
Dang, That's good. That's great comp.
Thank you for proving my point. Thank you, Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Reference, you're one of the best websites there is.
They are though. And
5th all time in solo tackles.
Oh.
And it's not my calculation, but there could be an argument for it. And they have him. Pro Football Focus has him as the 7th best inside linebacker of all time. And it took him to what? How many years you got to be retired before you get in the Hall of Fame?
5. Yep.
It took him 10 years to get into the Hall of Fame. That's a crime.
And again, he was on the Hall of Fame's All 2000s team.
It just seems like the voters just don't appreciate what a middle linebacker does. I mean, they're not gonna have the sexiest numbers. Not gonna get the gaudy sack numbers or anything like that. They're the ones that anchor the defense, and most good defenses have a good middle linebacker. And to me, if you're top 5 of your era, you're a Hall of Famer.
Should be.
You should be. That is our list. Did you agree with our list? Did you not agree? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you all for your likes. We are at 200 subscribers as of this moment that we are recording. Thank you for all those who subscribe. If you continue and have watched for many times, please go ahead. It doesn't cost you a single thing, but it helps us tremendously by liking and subscribing. Again, my name's Legacy.
And I'm Max.
I'm Bobby.
Vitamin J.
Ian Catan. I'll talk more next time.
All right, and may the discussions begin. See you guys later.